Greetings. Welcome to Community Bank News. My name is Tom Bengtson. I'm the publisher of Bank Beat magazine, and I am again joined by Sam Wilmes, who is the digital editor of our website, banknews.com. We bring you news from the community banking world every week, but this week I think what we're going to do is focus on agriculture. We've got a lot of ag banks in our readership area, very important part of the banking world. I was down at the Iowa Bankers Association convention earlier this week, and we got a very interesting report on the conditions in rural upper Midwest. And some of it's pretty dire, especially if you're a row crop farmer. The corn crop is enormous. In fact, they think it's going to be the biggest corn harvest on record, which sounds great, except for the fact that means prices are extremely low. A lot of corn farmers are going to be lucky to break even, and so that's a pretty difficult environment. The other big crop, of course, is soybeans. And this year, given the political environment, the biggest buyer, or the traditionally biggest buyer of soybeans, that is China, is basically sitting on the sidelines. They haven't bought any soybeans this year, and very unclear that they'll be getting back into the market anytime soon. So if you're growing and selling soybeans, it's a tough deal. So if you are a farmer, or I should say if you are a banker and you have customers who are growing corn and soybeans, you might be in for a tough conversation that you need to have with those customers in the coming months to figure out what to do in 2026. Now, Sam, I know I grew up in the city, but you grew up in a rural area. You grew up in southern Minnesota, surrounded by farmers. And I know that your father, in fact, was a journalist who covered the agricultural scene. What thoughts do you have about growing up there, and maybe conversations you might have had with your father as he covered that beat?
Correct. I grew up in a town called West Concord, population 750, number of family farms, southeastern Minnesota. And what I saw growing up mirrored what my dad covered in Agri-News based out of Rochester, the pride that family farms had in their operations. My classmates, several of which have since taken over their farms. Their parents lived through the 1980s ag crisis that strained rural communities and changed them forever, but the pride that they have and the desire they have to tend to their land is much like community bankers tending to their rural communities. They want to stay in business, and often they work into their 70s and their 80s, and I expect my classmates will too.
Yeah. Well, of course, the 80s was a very difficult time for bankers. A lot of banks closed. And of course, in this part of the world, that was tied to the situation in rural America. Now, fortunately, during this session I sat in on at the Iowa Bankers Convention, the question was raised, is this the 1980s all over again? And the answer was no. And the reason for that was that the price of land is elevated now, but that land is holding its value. So in the 80s, we had elevated land prices. But as things got bad, that price plunged. The price of the cost of that land went way down. And so banks that had lent against the peak value of that land all of a sudden lost their collateral when those prices fell. So that was a very bad situation and caused a lot of problems in the world of finance. But that is not the case today. What I hear from bankers is that they may be lending against farmland, but only to a fraction. If the land is worth $20,000 an acre, they may only be lending on maybe $5,000 of that. So that leaves a lot of room for cushion and for things to change and for the collateral to hold up. So that's good. The other thing I wanted to mention that's kind of a bright spot is beef. Now, did you have any beef people raising cattle in your neck of the woods?
Yes, my godparents raised cattle.
Okay, yeah. Well, what I'm hearing today is that obviously you go to the store and you see it. Meat prices are way up, beef prices are way up, and it's kind of interesting because what's causing the high price is that the supply is way down. The cost of feed a few years caused many ranchers or beef producers to reduce the size of their herds. So the supply of beef is at a minimum, while demand is quite robust. It's really kind of funny. You hear about people being vegetarian and not being interested in meat, but that apparently is not the case right now. The demand for beef is very strong. Consumers want beef, at a time when there isn't much, so obviously the prices are high, and if you have the beef that's available, then you're going to do quite well, and banks who are financing those operations are going to be totally fine. So that's really great. But growing up on the farm's got to be kind of a cool, I always kind of romanticize it. I think it's kind of a cool thing, but might be different if you're actually in the middle of it.
Well, this time of year, I'm always reminded growing up, we didn't technically grow up on a farm, but we lived in the country, and we always, at night, we would see the tractors come by with the lights on and smell what was going on out there and see it. There was nothing like it. I've since moved to the suburbs, but I'll never forget growing up in that kind of environment.
Sure. Well, it's a great part of our economy, of our industry, and of our country. So we're very happy at BankBeat Magazine and banknews.com to cover the ag scene as much as we can. And we know that it's very important to a big part of our banker audience. So, well, we're going to wrap it up there. We didn't really get to the other big items going on in community banking. We will come back to that next week, but thank you for being with us. Again, I'm Tom Bengtson.
And I'm Digital Managing Editor Sam Wilmes.
Thank you.